everybody was ranting and raving about getting Tua back. And when Tua comes back, this team's going to be on fire. It's going to be electric. And to some degree, that's been true. Like, they definitely have found a new stride with Tua that, ironically, surprisingly, Skylar Thompson didn't deliver. Who would have guessed? Welcome in, guys, to Sports Bluff. Week 9 is in the books, pretty much, except for the Monday game. It's been a week of absurd ejections, insane catches, and what can only be described as Jackie Chan moves, if you ask me. But that's probably the biggest surprises of Week 9, all in all, wouldn't you say? Like, none of the games really shocked me too much.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think there was any, shocking result necessarily. Some good games, some really good games, but more like some just great plays. Bad reffing and good plays. Felt like this was the worst ref.
There's the absurd ejections I was talking about.
Yeah, the Brian Branch ejection. Look, say what you want about it. I didn't even think it was that bad. We were talking about it. We're playing football. We cannot throw a grown man out of the game. If you want to have a penalty, okay. If you want to say unnecessary roughness, 15 yards, we're not turning into college. We're not. I understand you get ejected for throwing a punch. Puka Nacua got ejected. By the way, I didn't even like that. The other guy shoved him. He kind of half-assed threw a punch, and they ejected him. I'm like, how about we throw a 15-yarder? Maybe they sit a play. We're throwing professional men out of the game. I think that's kind of ridiculous.
It is, and I think
I might be in the minority. I don't know.
No, I don't believe you are. I think it was a Seahawks game that we were watching, where I can't remember if the Seahawks were on defense or not, but I think they were on defense, and they just smash mouth played on the ball, played the receiver, knocked the ball out of his hands, and the ref just threw a flag. Yep. And it was just because it was a big hit. That is it. You cannot tell me it was for anything else. So what's happened is these refs have been pigeonholed into this mentality of saying, well, if there's a big play and those helmets and that plastic hit really hard and it sounds bad, I should probably go ahead and throw the flag, because worst case scenario, you can pick the flag up. But here's the deal. Do you remember old school football?
Oh,
people would get decapitated almost, and they would just literally just get up and walk off. So I don't know if they were just tougher back then. I know the hits are harder now because guys are just stronger than they were back then. I get all that. But at the same time, we can't be flag happy, man. It's just every play that seems like a big hit. Oh, there's a flag. Oh, there's a flag. Use some judgment call, but also let the guys play football. This is a hard hitting sport. They got into it and got paid millions of dollars to put their life on the line. Just ask Chris Olave. I mean, dude was sandwiched, knocked out cold. And that, now that, I don't even, if it was back in the old days, that wouldn't have been a penalty. That's all I'm saying.
No. Now, look, I understand that there's a fine line, with safety. I really do get that. And I understand there are some helmet to helmets that are egregious. Yes. But to me, I feel like you can tell when it's a dirty play, when it's an intentionally dirty play. When it's a bang, bang hit, I don't want to turn into college where it's targeting because he lowered the helmet. It's dude, this stuff is happening in a millisecond. He's trying to make the tackle. His job depends on it. Things happen sometimes.
And on top of that, in the Seahawks game, we were down to the wire. Every play mattered. Every play mattered. So in that case, if they're trying to win this football game, the last thing they can do is let a first down happen. So what do? You play hard on the ball. You do everything in your power to knock that ball free of the receiver's hands, and that's exactly what they did. And the ref standing right by them, happened right in front of the ref, threw a flag. It was completely unnecessary. He picked up the flag, and when everything was said and done, it just took time out of the game. It took momentum away from the Seahawks. It was poor reffing on every level this whole weekend, really.
Yeah, thankfully for the Seahawks game, they picked up the flag. They didn't call it. It just sucked to see Brian Branch ejected. I got to be honest, I did kind of like that he flipped off the crowd on the way out. And then I think they got another penalty. But I kind of get it from his perspective. The Lions were able to hang on. But it was a good weekend, though, aside from the egregious calls we saw.
Let's talk about a couple other funny things that happened this weekend. So did you see Amon-Ra's hoodie when he came into the stadium for Green Bay?
Oh, I saw.
His hoodie said, "Green Bay sucks."
He was right.
He was absolutely correct.
He might be a clairvoyant, or his dresser is.
And then let's talk about what everybody has posted about on Twitter. At least I've seen it on my feed. X. I'm still doing it.
That's fine.
It's always Twitter in my mind. Yeah, well, everybody does, so I guess we need to jump on board. So anyway, on Twitter, every post in my feed was the play. And the play I'm referring to is Saquon Barkley, who you and I talked about before the show. He could very well be described as an MVP candidate, at least for the Eagles. He is the Eagles' offense for the most part. But that move, and it wasn't just that one singular move, it was the entire 14 yards that he ran. Right. It was the spin move to the backwards hurdle.
Easily one of the most impressive football moves we've ever seen. Like, my wife doesn't even care about football, and I showed her. I was like, you got to see this. She was not as shocked by it by me. She's like, yeah, that probably happens all the time. I said, no. I said, it's crazy to hurdle a guy going forward. And I'm with you. It's not just the backwards hurdle. That was crazy in itself. It's, first off, he kind of jukes a guy, then he spins, and on the tail end of the spin, has the awareness to jump and hurdle a guy going backwards. It's the play of the year.
Yeah, it's like me in Madden as I'm playing, I'm hitting every button combination possible, and I just luckily happened to hit a backwards hurdle move that was hidden in Madden somewhere. That's what happened. And look, let's talk about a couple of other catches. And
hold on, time in. Let me jump into that off that. Because we had another one in that game, Devontae Smith's catch.
I was going there. That's where I was going.
In that game.
That's where I was going. I was going to catches next, and I was going to point out Devontae Smith in this game. That was a marvelous catch, man. It was so beautiful.
He does that all the time. He's small, but it just doesn't matter because he is so good. He catches it. He makes spectacular catches. It wasn't a good throw, but he went up and got it one-handed. We have seen a ton of great catches this weekend.
Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson, right. We saw Amon-Ra made a great catch. It was full. This weekend was full of players making great plays, and that's what you love to see in the NFL when you're just a general fan like us. With that said, we got a lot to get into. We're going to talk about the Lions defeating the Packers, the Bills defeating the Dolphins, the Rams holding on against the Seahawks, and Lamar Jackson looking like an MVP. We got a lot to get into, Ryan. Let's jump right in.
The Lions go into Lambeau in a rainstorm and take care of business, defeating the Packers 24-14. Hey, look, the Lions were held under 50 points. I would call that a successful game by the Packers, even though they didn't win. To hold the Lions under 50 points or 40 has been a hard thing to do as of late, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that might be the rain more than it was Green Bay, but
well, yeah, maybe so.
I don't know how much credit I give Green Bay on that.
Look, the scoreboard just says it. So at the end of the day, end of the season, nobody's going to remember that it rained today, okay, at Lambeau Field. But look, they've won 6 straight games. Who's stopping them?
Oh, man, probably no one. I mean, no one. The only thing that
can tornado?
Stop... Yeah, exactly.
Plow through Lambeau.
But, this was the game we kind of thought would... When the game started and it was a downpour in Lambeau, I was like, oh, man, look out. Because, I've kind of been high on Green Bay, and Jared Goff is notoriously bad in, outdoors. He's really good in domes. He's usually bad outdoors. He's usually bad in bad weather. He was wonderful today. It's not like his stats jump off but 18 for 22, 145 yards and a touchdown. He was efficient. On the other end, Jordan Love was kind of terrible most of the game. We will talk about him in the next question, so I'll wait. But it's not even Jared Goff who's just being efficient. This running back duo for the Lions, man, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's almost unfair.
It is almost unfair. 73 yards for Montgomery, 65 yards for Gibbs. Gibbs had a touchdown. One of them's getting a touchdown every week, usually both of them. They just have so many weapons. And they're paying Jared Goff. He's got a big salary. So the fact that you look at them, what other team in the NFL that is paying a quarterback a big salary, where a quarterback takes up a significant amount of their cap, what other team has this many top tier players on their team? Because it's like Detroit and everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to think, and I don't know. I would say one of the next best running back duo, you could say Austin Eckler looked great today, right? So Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson, they look great together. But
that's a steep fall off from Montgomery and Gibbs, though.
That's what I'm saying, right? I'm talking about duos that are just really that either one of them could be a starting running back at any other NFL team.
And Eckler got the work today because Robinson was out. So it's not like when they're both healthy, they're both getting as much work as Gibbs and Montgomery do.
Exactly, but they could maintain a RB1 role in most teams, right?
I would agree.
So as far as running back duos, this is just it's crazy, man. I don't understand how the cards fell so perfectly for the Lions, But I'm telling you this, if they make it to the Super Bowl, which I did pick preseason that they would make it to the Super Bowl, it's going to be a fun game to watch. The Lions are just on fire.
The only thing that concerns me about the Lions, and I don't want to just keep harping on it, is honestly just Jared Goff if he starts to get rattled. Because we've talked about it before. He's kind of like Kirk Cousins, as in when you get him off platform, when you start to hit him, when you start to wear down the pocket, force him on the move, he's not the same quarterback. I know he's doing well. They've had a tough schedule. They've run through almost every team. Their only loss is to Tampa. I don't know if any team can stop them on paper, but if you get in a given game against a D-line who starts to wear on Detroit, which is going to be difficult because Detroit has one of the best offensive lines in the league, but to me, that's the key. You have to have a defensive front who just is better than Detroit's offensive line or plays better than them on that day. Otherwise, I don't know if anybody can beat this team.
Jared Goff only has 4 interceptions on the year.
He has been fantastic.
So maybe he's fixed it, Maybe
he's been
off-platform stuff is kind of behind him. But if they can just stick to the run game, they'll win every single football game that they play. Let's talk about the opposite side of the ball. Jordan Love. You mentioned him. Let's talk about him. Because if you're a Packers fan and what's happened over the last couple of weeks with Jordan Love and the injury, and he played today, but was it completely healthy? Who knows? I don't think he was.
He wasn't. No way.
But are you worried about him?
Yeah, I am. Obviously, we said last year he looked great. We love Jordan Love, but we said when we were analyzing him and talking about him going forward, we got to see what he looks like after the first. Same with CJ Stroud, and he's regressed a little this year. You could talk about how much is his fault, how much is that offensive line. That's fair. Same with Jordan Love. I'm worried about Jordan Love for 2 reasons. One, let's separate the play and let's separate the injuries because those are the 2 things. We'll talk about the play in a second. He does seem to be leaning on becoming injury prone. He's been dealing with a lot of injuries. First off, he had injuries before he was even a starter. And now this year he got hurt in that first game in Brazil, I believe it was. And then he went out of another game, came back, and then he had this groin injury where you didn't know if he was going to start, and he started, and it looked rough. I mean, he was just flat out bad in this game up until mid-third quarter. Then he started to look okay. Like mid-third quarter onward, he started to look decent. But he missed a lot of just easy throws. Like he missed a lot of throws he should have made. There were plays to be made. The Packers could have been in this game, but he just wasn't able to capitalize on it. And then the throws he did capitalize on, the receivers dropped the ball, but literally and metaphorically. So aside from the injuries, the other thing for me is just mechanics. He has that thing that he's clearly learned from Rodgers where he throws off his back foot a ton. And there was one play, I can't remember what quarter it was. I feel like it was the 3rd quarter maybe, he was throwing and had a touchdown, like had an open touchdown pass, and he didn't have any pressure. He'd roll out to the right, and instead of just setting his feet and delivering a touchdown to get them in the ball game, he slings it falling backwards off his back foot. He does that all of the time, and he's so talented and he has a good arm that a lot of the times he can overcome it, but then you get in a game like this, and I just want to scream like, man, you're costing your team points. Set your feet and deliver the football. You kind of saw this with Mahomes early in his career, although maybe not quite to this degree, where he wouldn't deliver with good mechanics, deliver with good footwork. Finally, they got that kind of drilled into him. They need to do the same with Jordan Love because his explosive ability is fantastic, but you cannot keep having this just throwing off your back foot while you're falling backwards because it takes you out of ball games. If he would have stood and delivered the ball right where it needed to be. And I know the injury was an issue, so I'm cutting him a little slack, but the whole mechanic thing is not specific to this game. It's specific to his entire career. It has to get cleaned up. It has to.
When he's able to set his feet, make a good
throw. It's not able. He just refuses to.
When he is in the position, when he thinks about it, when he brings it back from memory to actually set his feet, make the throw, he can throw dimes. Him and Jaden Reed, their connection is undeniable. It is a great quarterback receiver duo in the NFL when it's clicking, right? But when it's not, it's really not. That's the problem. With them having a bye week next week, I wasn't even a big fan of them playing Jordan Love this week. I thought they could have made do with Malik this week, and because Malik got them 2 wins, by the way. The 2 games he started, they won. So I think he could have managed. They could have managed Josh Jacobs on the ground more. He came out swinging, early in the game, first quarter. Josh Jacobs was getting the ball left and right, and they were moving the ball.
Right, he was their offense.
Right. And then they got behind and the interception and everything, and that just kind of threw things off.
Well, yeah, the interception right before the half, the pick six, that was really where the game swung. Because up until then, they were in it, and then they tried to claw back in it, and they just couldn't, and there were just too many mistakes, not just on Jordan Love. To the messiness point, I put this in here, I meant to mention it. This is his 7th straight regular season game with an interception. It's the longest streak by a Green Bay quarterback since Brett Favre in 2006.
Ooh, that's rough.
So, I mean, this is an issue. Everyone knows it. Matt LaFleur knows it. Jordan Love knows it. I agree with you about, by the way, it might have been
Jordan
better.
Love knowing?
He knows it. He just gets sloppy because he knows he has a good arm. He knows that it's talent. And he sat behind Aaron Rodgers and watched him do it. But here's the thing, too, to your point about benching him. I agree. I think if it wasn't for the fact that this game was literally for first place in the NFC North, if the Packers won this game, they are in first place in the North. So I think they got a little greedy, little desperate, and started Love when he probably wasn't ready because he did not look 100% out there.
So let's real quick just recap the Green Bay remainder of the season after their bye. So week 10 bye, they come back to play the Bears at Chicago, the 49ers, the Dolphins, who almost won against the Bills. We'll talk about that later. They played the Lions again, another divisional matchup. Then they played the Seahawks, the Saints, the Vikings, and then also the Bears, again, another divisional matchup.
It's not an easy schedule.
It's not, right? So that's my concern. It's like, are we going to see in this, after this bye week, are we going to see Jordan Love come out and kind of have his crap together and make successful, on the money throws, set his feet and everything? Or are we going to continue to see that flustered type of, almost rookie-like mentality shine through Jordan Love the remainder of the season?
I think we're going to continue to see what we've seen. And I picked Green Bay to make it to the Super Bowl to represent the NFC. I was high on them this year. I still believe in Jordan Love. I still believe in the team. It's just becoming clearer to me week by week. They're just still too young. They're just still, because they have, I think, the most young players of any team or the youngest team of anybody. They're just not there because even put the Jordan Love mistakes and issues aside, because he does make big plays for you too, they're just inconsistent in other spots of the team too. They drop balls or they make turnovers, they commit penalties, they don't capitalize on opportunities. They're just kind of messy. That's the best word for it. And it feels like there may be another year or two from cleaning all that up. So I think Green Bay kind of continues to look like this. I think this is who they are. They can beat anybody on any given Sunday. They 100% can. If they have everything together and play a perfect game, they can beat anybody, but more likely than not, they're going to make mistakes and give their opponent a chance to win.
The Dolphins almost ended the Buffalo Bills' domination of the Dolphins. For the last several years today, they barely won the Buffalo Bills 30-27 in a nail-biter of an ending. I mean, probably one of the best endings of the day, if you ask me.
Yeah, one of the better games.
Yeah, for sure. And Tua played a terrific game. The Buffalo Bills played a great game. The defense slacked up a little bit and allowed Miami to score. But it just shows you that with Tua, man, how powerful this offense can be with A-Chain and his big helmet that he likes to wear. And I was right, by the way, a couple weeks ago. That's who it was. He just looks It looks like like My Little Martian, It just kind of looks.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like to me. But this offense is very powerful, and it's a divisional matchup, so it's always going to be tough. So the Buffalo Bills, obviously, everybody knows Tyler Bass kicked the game-winning field goal, 61 yards. A guy who I think missed a couple of kicks today, right? And then comes in and boots. He could have made it from 70. It was a perfect kick, and
he's been kind of notoriously bad lately. And go back to last year, he's kind of been a bad kicker. So the fact that he drilled that 61 was incredible. I never expected him to make that.
Yeah, I didn't either, honestly. I fully believe that this game was going into overtime, especially when, Miami stepped up and kind of shut down the Bills when it got close to the end of that fourth quarter. But one topic I do want to touch on is the Bills defense. And I kind of want your take because I can lean a little biased because I am a Bills fan, as many of you know. Is the Bills defense good enough to be a contender? And I'm going to leave that open-ended, and you kind of just fill in the blanks of what I mean by contender, whether it's contender of Super Bowl, playoffs, the division, whatever it may be. Are they good enough to even be in contention?
That's a tough question because sometimes I think they are, sometimes I think they're not. They gave up 27 points today against the Dolphins, but we know the Dolphins are better with Tua. We understand that. I've got a graphic just to look at the Buffalo Bills' defensive stats and where they rank on the league. So let's pull that up real quick. In yards a game, they're 16th in the league. Pass yards a game, they're 15th in the league. Rush yards a game, 15th in the league. Points allowed per game, they're 7th in the league, so they're only allowing 19 points a game. Here's their strong suit, though, takeaways. They have 15 takeaways this year, tied for third best in the league. The rest of the stats are mediocre. They're middle of the road, 15th, 16th. But when you watch them play, they feel better than that. I just think they don't quite have the talent. This is a team that we know consistently deals with a lot of injuries, but Sean McDermott is such a good defensive coach, he's able to overcome that, and the scheme is able to overcome that. I just kind of think McDermott is a good enough defensive coach to contend with anybody, and their offense has been getting better and better. I think over the course of the last 3 weeks, they've been top 5 in offensive yards a game. Josh Allen is a legit MVP contender. We looked at the odds before the season. Do I think the Bills' defense is good enough to be a contender? Yes, because of the way Josh Allen is playing, because of McDermott's scheme. Do I think the Bills' defense is where they want it to be? No, but as long as you're only giving up 19 points a game, because yeah, they're giving up yards, but you're only giving up 19 points a game and you're getting a lot of takeaways, you can survive like that.
Yeah, for sure. And, if you look back at week 2 when the Dolphins and the Bills first met, and I think that was the game that Tua got injured, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, you're right.
And so he threw 3 of those interceptions, Tua did. So the bulk of those 15 came from that one game.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, that the Dolphins did step up and they played us a lot tougher than I think the Bills expected. And they did it in the Bills' home field. So kudos to the Dolphins, man. Like, I think 2 weeks in a row that they've had a really close football game and they just couldn't do it. They almost got there. The Bills obviously have some issues to work through when it comes to defensive schemes and everything like that. I think it can, like you said, it's really young secondary. The line is pretty good. Their red zone defense is stellar. Like, they can stop anybody when it comes to, if you're within the 10-yard line, whatever, they can stop you.
I think that's why when you look at their stats, they only give up 19 points a game, but they give up a lot of yards. It's kind of like similar to Kansas City. Seriously, Kansas City lets teams get yards, but they don't let them get touchdowns. It's kind of, but that,
or they'll get a turnover in the red zone.
Exactly.
And then, there you go.
And look at last week, perfect example with Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes turns the ball over, not his fault, got tipped at their own one. So then Raiders get it 1st and goal, and the Chiefs deliver a goal line stand. The Bills are kind of like that. Those are my favorite defenses, the bend but don't break defense. We'll give you yards, but when we get in the red zone, we're going to tighten up. We're not going to give up the big play. And I could be totally wrong about this. This is just off the cuff. I don't know what the stats are. It feels like the Bills don't allow a lot of explosive plays, other than the Ravens game, obviously. But besides that outlier, I feel like they don't give up a ton of explosive plays.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that even those teams like Kansas City, like you mentioned, the Bills are playing this way too this year, they may give up the yards, may not be gash plays or anything, but they'll let you get into the red zone, but they buckle up and then they strap down and they don't let you score points. And man, that can take the gas away from your team like that. I mean, it is just a gut punch. When you get all these yards, you get down to the red zone and you can't manage to bring it home and score the touchdown. Like, that hurts you more than almost, not even getting past midfield.
Right. Well, we obviously, it's harder to score in the red zone. The field's condensed, it's easier for the defense to play. And that's kind of, I think, Sean McDermott's mentality. We're okay with giving up the underneath because we will buckle down the red zone or we'll get turnovers. We've seen they get a lot of turnovers. Last point on the Bills, when you compare, they're only giving up 19 points a game. And even though 15th, 16th in those other yards categories, when you look at their offense, they are 5th in points scored a game. So they're averaging 29 points a game offensively. In the past, we've seen the Bills kind of struggle offensively to score points, but with Joe Brady, with James Cook, even though the receiving core is not what they want it to be, they're able to put up points. So when you're averaging 30 on offense and only giving up 19, that's good. And we know the Bills are going to make the playoffs because they're going to win the division, and I think they could beat almost any team in the playoffs. Anything could happen. So 100% they can be a contender with the defense.
Yeah, Shakir also looking great. I think I saw the stat today. They popped it up on the screen that he's like one of the most targeted or the most targeted receivers in the NFL. So we're waiting for Amari Cooper to show up. Okay, as a Bills fan, we're just waiting. because he was injured today and didn't play, so that was a bummer. And then last week he was pretty much non-existent as well. We hope that he is back next week and can play some good football because, man, we need him. We need him. I know it looked great today, but with Amari Cooper, I think it'll look even better. Let's talk about the opposite side of the ball, too, because I do want to bring this up. Miami, like I said, it's been close 2 times. Everybody was ranting and raving about getting Tua back, and when Tua comes back, this team's going to be on fire. It's going to be electric, and to some degree, that's been true. Like, they definitely have found a new stride with Tua that, ironically, surprisingly, Skylar Thompson didn't deliver. Who would have guessed? What I will say, though, is Miami cannot close out these close games, man, and it's been going on all year long. So it's a concern. This team is 2-6. It's a team that I thought would be, winning the division. I think I picked them to win the division because of how offensively explosive they are. So my question to you is, Mike McDaniel, is he getting enough criticism? And then how much responsibility does he hold for Miami's rough season?
So we actually have not talked about this before right now. We came up with the questions and now we're talking. I don't know what your opinion is on this, and I'm really excited to have this discussion because we haven't had it as friends away from the show, on the show at all yet. I don't think he's getting enough blame because I think I'm ready to say Mike McDaniel's not a good football coach. Here's the thing.
Is it still the shiny new toy? Is everybody just kind of shocked by him because he's so young and where he came from and everything, and he's still kind of that new young face in the NFL?
I think they were. I think the shine is starting to wear off. And the thing is Mike McDaniel a good offensive coordinator? Yes. But even this year, and I'm not an all-22 scheme guru. I know a little bit, not a lot. There's plenty of people that can talk about it way better than I can. But I've seen other people talk about it, and from watching, his scheme really isn't as impressive as it seemed to be when he first came in. When he first came in and was using those cheat motions and everything, it was a little bit more surprising, but his run game is kind of basic. It's kind of lackluster. And this team is just completely different without Tua. And I know it's easy to say, well, Tristan, without the court. But no, that's kind of the NFL. Sometimes your quarterback gets hurt. I mean, Andy Reid has won playoff games where Patrick Mahomes got hurt and Chad Henne had to come in. If Tua got hurt in a playoff game and the backup came in, even if they were up 15, 14, they're losing the game. It completely falls apart without Tua. That's an indictment on the head football coach. I am starting to believe that Mike McDaniel is perhaps a good coordinator, maybe even a great coordinator. I just don't think he has what it takes to be a great head coach. We know that job takes so much more. It's so much more than just having a good offense or a good defense. It's running a team. It's running an organization. And it really just feels like they're so Tua dependent that when he's gone, they don't have an identity. And when he's there, their identity is kind of Tua and speed. And we know that they lose to teams that are above 500. I mean, this is a problem his entire career at Miami. They do not beat good teams. They just beat up on bad teams. I don't think Mike McDaniel has what it takes to be a great head coach. I don't think he's there yet.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you because with this offense, everybody knows that on paper, it is one of the most explosive offenses in the league. And I know you can kind of say okay, there's some offensive line issues. Yeah, I get it. But still, the fact that the Dolphins came this close to beating the Bills, I think if it was a better coached football team, they could have taken it the next mile and actually beaten the Bills today. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? They've been washed by the Bills now. So, and then also, I was reading this article earlier, and I didn't know this, but supposedly in the organization, or at least people that know Mike McDaniel, his play calls are enormously long. They are the most convoluted, complex, calls through the headset. So if you ever notice, Tua's always rushing up to the ball to snap the play, and a lot of times they have to take a timeout or they'll get a delay a game or something like that. The fact is, if he's calling the plays and it takes that long, there's two things that's happening. One, he's reviewing the previous play way too long. Secondly, he's calling complicated plays, or at least the actual call is complicated. The play on the field doesn't look that complicated. Like you said, it's kind of lackluster. It's kind of boring. It's almost kind of similar to the Cincinnati play calls that we were used to. Just kind of a very mundane offense. and they kind of are one script show. This is just what they do. So I think that Mike McDaniel needs to have a lot more criticism on his shoulders, and I think that will start to increase throughout the year if they don't start winning these games that they come really close, within 3 points of winning a game that was very manageable for them. Like, they could have easily beaten us at several different points in the football game, and they just couldn't do it. Well, today we saw that old quarterbacks can still pull out new tricks. This game was one of my favorite games to watch today. Honestly, it was one of the best games in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The Rams defeated the Seahawks, who were at home in overtime, 26-20, in a beautiful, beautiful ending to the football game. That pass was just perfect. I think this was like Robinson or something. Anyway,
it was DeMarcus Robinson. He's the only one that caught touchdown. He caught 2 today.
Perfect lead in to this question. Speaking of the roster of the Rams, that it seems like every week we're having to put new receivers in for Stafford to throw to, and he keeps doing pretty good at it. Is this roster good enough, and how far can the Rams go with this roster?
Yes, I think they can make a playoff run, mainly because the NFC West, no one's running away with it. If you look at it right now, the Cardinals are actually leading the NFC West 5-4. Then it's the Rams, the Niners, and the Seahawks, all with 4 wins. A lot of them have played each other. The Niners aren't as good as people expected them to be preseason.
This division is literally almost on its head compared to how I thought it would be at week 9 in the season.
100%. Perfect way to say it. The roster has a lot of issues. We know they dealt with injuries. When Puka and Cooper Kupp are out there, even though Kupp's older, but still having him out there, when they're out there, it makes all the difference.
And
Kyren Williams, he's fantastic.
Huge part
Matthew Stafford still has it. He's just incredible. He is one of the best players in the National Football League. Every single week, we talk about it all the time. Other people talk about it. Every time you watch Matt Stafford play, you're like, shit, he's better than I thought he was. And and we think he's terrific. And then you watch him, you're like, God, he's good. He's just so good. He's so clutch. I love him and Sean McVay. The kind of, impact player on the Rams that people are talking about, but we haven't talked about, is Jared Verse, the rookie edge rusher out of Florida State. Ryan, he wrecked this game.
All over. 7 sacks today for Geno Smith.
Put aside sacks, though, it's pressures. Like, yes, sacks are a nice, stat pattern, but the real effect on the game is pressures. It's you forcing the quarterback to throw the ball away sooner than he wants to, or forcing him to move outside the pocket. Jared Verse is a game wrecker. He's running away with Defensive Rookie of the Year. He is an impact player. Their interior defensive line, while it's not great, they are super young. And they are good, and they're getting better every single week. Kobe Turner is starting to get better. Brown on the interior is fantastic. They have pieces. They just have youth. So they kind of need, all of their offensive weapons out there to hang in these games because their defense is going to give up some points. But it kind of feels like to me, the Rams are one of those teams, while they may not be the best on paper, they might play some sloppy games. If you look up in the fourth quarter, it's kind of close games every week with the Rams, but with McVay and Stafford, they know how to win those games. I could see them making the playoffs and losing their first game, or I could see them literally going all the way to the Super Bowl because it's any given Sunday in football. I'm not trying to be, hyperbolic or non-answer. I think they could go either way.
This team reminds me of which I know it was redone, but the one in my generation, the Adam Sandler Longest Yard film. Like, this is the team that kind of reminds me of that team. They're just dirty dogs, it doesn't matter. All adversities against them, they're still going to find a way to win. Stafford's still this old guy that can throw a football. And like you said, the stats may not show it. The fantasy points may not represent it, but he is clutch. He is one of the most clutch quarterbacks in the NFL today. When the game is on the line, he's been there, he's done it, he's won it. And I'm telling you that Stafford, if you're ever playing against him, don't ever count him out.
Absolutely not.
Quarterback on the other side, there's some issues. There's some pretty big issues. 7 sacks is one of them. Obviously, the offensive line got 8 up today. By the way, Verse had 1 sack. Everybody else on the Rams had another, though. So, in case you were wondering, I think the entire starting defense had a sack. And it was because of Verse. Like, Verse getting pressures. Yeah. He had 4 tackles, by the way. Just crazy. I didn't realize how good of a player Verse was until today. He really shined. Like, he is a terrific football player. But Geno Smith, we got to talk about him because there's some big issues there. He had an up and down day. And and I would say mostly down for the most. Like, I mean, he made some good throws, and like Jackson's JSN and him like hooked up pretty good, but he also made some really dumb throws, like complete ghost throws to the Rams. There was one interception where there was nobody around, and he just threw the ball to the defense.
So, Ryan, he had 3 picks, and he could have easily had 5 or 6. I mean, he tried to throw it to him a couple extra times.
Okay, so the question here in the show script, just to be transparent, is what do they do, or what should they do with him after the season? I want to know what they should do during the season, too.
Okay, well, I can answer that. Nothing. During the season, you ride with Geno, because there's no option. Geno is good. He's good. But here's the thing for Geno. It kind of falls back to what we said about the Dolphins and McDaniel. Against bad teams, he's spectacular. And against good teams is when you start to see the struggles. Now, it's catch-22 because take away the picks today. Take away the interceptions. Geno is good. Like, he's really good. But you cannot have the interceptions he has. And like you said, Ryan, it's not just, he made a bad mistake. It's literally you look at it and you're like, dude, what the hell were you looking at? Or like he gets pressured and gets forced out and just throws it up for grabs. I know the Seahawks offensive line is bad. We said this preseason.
And it's bruised.
No doubt. No doubt. But we talked about that this preseason, how the offensive line was going to be an issue. It is. So I don't envy him in that position, but he tries to force the ball so often. Geno Smith is what he has been in Seattle. He is a great bridge quarterback. By definition, he is the perfect guy to come in, be good, be serviceable, get you wins, maybe make the playoffs until you can get in another guy. I know the quarterback draft class this next year is, poor, but I think the Seahawks need to be incredibly aggressive in pursuing a quarterback in some way, because in my opinion, even though if I was a Seahawks fan, I would be thankful for what he's done. I would say, hey, you're a good player, you're solid, but we cannot start another season with Geno at quarterback. I think it's time to start, figuring out the transition.
Yeah, but as of right now, he's doing what he's doing what they need him to do. He's playing status quo football, right? He's being that bridge quarterback, like you said. Now, who they get in the draft, who they could try to trade up and get, because the problem is, like, Geno's good enough to keep you middle of the road where you don't get that, like, gorgeous draft pick and get exactly who you want.
Well, especially next year when there's, like, no quarter, there might be Shadur Sanders is probably going to be number 1, and after that, it's a big drop-off.
Yeah, Cam Ward's probably the second.
And that's probably it. Those are probably the only 2 legit, like, guys to go grab.
Quinn Ewers?
Ewers?
I don't know how to say his last name. Yeah, well, I'm just saying that's the top 3 right now. So,
I know.
But if you don't hit one of those 2, like maybe Cam Ward could be that guy for you. But, I mean, overall, like, if you could get Cam Ward and sit him behind Geno for a year, that may be worthwhile. That's all I'm saying. Another dominant performance by the Baltimore Ravens. Surprise everybody. It actually kind of was a little bit of a surprise for me because I thought this Denver defense would hold up a little bit better than they did today. 41 points. I did
too.
41 points, Tristan. Like, if you're Sean Payton, you got to be scratching your head like, what just happened? Because I don't think anybody saw the Ravens scoring this many points. At least I didn't.
Oh, I know what happened.
What's that?
It was Lamar Jackson.
Ooh, you talk about a good football player, a superb, spectacular football player, Lamar Jackson. Man, I'll tell you what, after this week, he has got to be the front runner for the MVP, right?
Yeah, he does, because we're in a situation similar to last year where, like, think back to last year, nobody was really running away with the MVP. It was like, for a couple weeks, people were saying it was Dak, and then, sadly, for a couple weeks, people were saying it was Brock Purdy. Me and you weren't, because we're rational. We came on this show and said that was idiotic. And then Lamar ended up winning it, of course. This year feels the same. It feels like there's really not a guy running away with it. I know if you look at the odds, like the 3 guys up there, and I would kind of agree with this, are Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, and Josh Allen, okay? But I think between those 3, Lamar Jackson is playing significantly better football.
He broke Ben Roethlisberger's NFL record today with the most career games with perfect passer rating.
That's unbelievable. I mean, that really is unbelievable. And if he wins the MVP, it'll be his 3rd MVP, putting him in like a rarefied air. I think I said earlier when we talked about only 6 guys have won the MVP 3 or more times. He would be a lock first ballot Hall of Famer. The only thing Lamar doesn't have is clutch playoff wins and a ring. That's it. So the only thing missing from his career is being clutch in a big playoff game, winning a Super Bowl. He has time for that. He's still a young player. Let's not even talk about that. Let's talk about where he is now. I've got a graphic to show his stats and show where he is this year. Let's take a look. Pass yards, he's got 2,300. That's second in the league. Touchdowns, he's got 20. That's tied for second. Interceptions, Ryan, he's thrown 2 interceptions all year. Tied for second. Rating, 120.7. That's best in the league. And then rush yards, 505. That's best for any quarterback. First out of quarterbacks, obviously. He is fantastic. He is carrying the team. I'll add this one caveat. If the MVP wasn't just a quarterback award, I would make a strong argument for Derrick Henry or for Saquon Barkley. Henry has better stats than Saquon Barkley, even though watching Barkley, he has been incredible and kind of been the soul of that Eagles offense. I wish it wasn't just a quarterback award, but it just is. It is. But in years like this where a quarterback's not running away with it, I would love to see a running back or a wide receiver get the opportunity. I think Derrick Henry could get there at his age. It would be great for him to have an MVP, but I live in a world of reality. I know it's going to a quarterback. Right now, I think it's probably Lamar Jackson. Some people would make the argument for Josh Allen, but watching the two play, I just feel like Lamar Jackson has played far superior to Allen.
One thing I do want to point out, though, about Lamar, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, so like these great quarterbacks, and I would put them on a tier by themselves. So I'd take these 3 quarterbacks, put them up on a pedestal, and then like the next best guy down is probably Joe Burrow.
Right.
But Joe Burrow is surrounded by super talented wide receivers, right? What all 3 of these guys have in common, Lamar, Josh, and Patrick, is they're surrounded by like mid-tier receivers.
Yeah.
Zay Flowers probably being the best one. I mean, you could say Amari Cooper, but like he hasn't played much.
Rashee Rice, if he was playing, would be the best amongst the group.
But I'm talking about this year. Yeah. This year, right now. Like the best receiver you have is Zay Flowers out of those 3 receiving cores. And these guys are playing lights out football, and they're making everybody around them much better. So I think that is a quality of an MVP candidate. I will always say that. I said it about Patrick Mahomes for years. He's always done this since Tyreek Hill left. He's elevated everybody around him. And yeah, I know they have Mark Andrews, and I know they have Travis Kelce, and
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I'm talking about receiving core people that like catch the football from these guys most of the time. They make these guys look better. Shakir was off anybody's radar for a long time until this year. And then you have people like Zay Flowers. Like, yeah, he was touted as like a top wide receiver. Obviously, he hasn't been in the upper echelon of like top 10 guys, but Lamar makes him that. And so I just think that it's a huge attribute of an MVP quarterback to say, I can make all of these guys good. Like my talent alone, I can deliver them the ball. They don't even have to like be terrific receivers. I can get them the ball. That is, if you're voting MVP on the ballot, that's one of the checkbox I'm marking. All right, guys, every now and then we like to throw a fun game at you. We're going to do it this week with a game we like to call Hold 'em or Fold 'em.
Hold 'em or fold 'em. Welcome to the NFL.
The way this game works is each division leader, I will ask Tristan if he would like to hold them, meaning he thinks they will win the division, or fold them, meaning he thinks they will lose the division, or at least come out of that first place spot. Let's get started. Let's go to the Buffalo Bills. They're 7-2 right now. Tristan, are you holding them or folding them?
The easiest one on the list, I'll make it quick, hold them. They're going to win this division. 1, because they're the best team, and 2, because I think what second place is 5 games back. This one's easy. The Bills are winning this division. I thought it preseason. It's holding.
Yeah, I think they've already swept the second best team in this division. So for me, it's going to be a hold 'em as well. The Commanders, they are 7-2 right now. What you doing with them? Hold 'em, fold 'em?
This is one of the tougher ones, actually.
Okay.
They're 7-2. The Eagles are right behind them at 6-2. I'm going to say right now, Ryan, fold 'em. I think when it's said and done, the Eagles are going to win this division. The way the Eagles have looked the past few weeks has been spectacular. The Eagles have won 4 in a row. I know the Commanders keep finding ways to win, but they still have to play each other twice. And it just, to me, feels like the youth and the inexperience of the Commanders is going to bite them in those Philly games. I am not a Sirianni fan. I like Dan Quinn more. I like Jaden Daniels more than Jalen Hurts, but I think overall the Eagles are kind of rounding into form as a better football team with Saquon Barkley, with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. The defense is starting to play really well together. They're just getting better at the perfect time. I think the Eagles are going to end up overtaking them, so fold them on the Commanders.
If you would have asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have probably said hold them on the Commanders, but you're right. As far as the second best roster, aside from the Lions in the NFL, it's got to be the Eagles to me. This offense is just explosive. The defense is coming on strong too. Everything's kind of working in their favor, so I'm going to fold the Commanders right there with you. Let's move on to Kansas City. They are 7-0 right now, the only undefeated team. The Monday night game hasn't taken place, but I am going to go ahead and bet that they will win against the depleted and injured Tampa Bay Bucks. Are you going to hold them or fold them?
This is a predicament for me because I don't know if this video is going to come out. This video is probably coming out after they play the Bucks, but here, I'll make it easy.
Surely we're going to jinx them.
Right. But here's the thing. Whether they win or lose the Bucks game, whether they're 8-0 or 7-1, you're holding them. They're not going to lose this division. Now, hey, wouldn't shock me if the Chargers or the Broncos are able to, even win one of those games and make the playoffs. I think one of those teams, the Chargers or the Broncos, will be a wild card team. Both are kind of better than we expected, a little bit, but you're not going to overtake Patrick Mahomes unless something crazy happens. The fact that the Chiefs are undefeated with the injuries, it's Andy Reid, it's Patrick Mahomes, and also it's Spags in that defense, dude. This is a defensive team. They're getting healthy. They added Hopkins back. Hold them. The Chiefs are winning the AFC West.
I'm going to hold them too, man. And like you said, the Chargers and the Broncos, Harbaugh's doing great things at the Chargers, especially after the win today. Looked great. The Broncos, Bo Nix is doing absurd things. He's playing some really good football. I just don't think it's enough to overcome Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. So let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals. This is a fun one. 5-4 right now. Did not think that they would be atop their division in Week 9, but here we are, and they are leading this division over the Rams, over the 49ers, and the Seahawks. So are you holding them or folding them?
This is the division that's probably most in flux in the NFL. You said earlier, I think when we talked about it, you said, if you would have told me this was complete opposite, you would have believed it more than hearing what it is right now.
100%.
It's just crazy. Cardinals, 1 game above the Rams, both teams on a 3-game win streak. I'm going to say fold them, but I want to add the caveat. I would not be just shocked if the Cardinals win because they're starting to play more complete football. First off, Kyler Murray is probably playing the best football of his career. He has really matured into
He said it.
Yeah, not just playing, the run around, kid trying to catch, dad trying to catch the kids out back. Like, he's starting to play professional quarterback. Their defense is still, up and down. I think Gannon's a good football coach. I know we said last year that was probably the shock of the 2023 season. Gannon turned out to be a good coach. They've just got a lot of personnel deficiencies. The roster is just not quite there, I don't think, to compete with the Rams and the 49ers as we move down the stretch. But considering the injuries the Rams and the 49ers have dealt with, it's possible. Just at this juncture, I'm still going to think LA or San Fran's going to find a way to overtake them. So fold them for me. Wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way.
Yeah, I'm going to fold them too, just because I was looking at the schedule while you were talking. They beat the 49ers in Week 5. I don't think that'll happen again. They also play the Seahawks twice after their bye, and then the Rams and the 49ers again. So I think that's a really tough schedule to ask them to win through, and I think that it's going to be enough to kind of bump them down in this division and put the Rams atop that division.
They did beat the Rams once already too, though. They did. So to be fair, they do have a win over the Rams and the 49ers, which is impressive.
Which is even makes me less confident that they'll sweep these teams, right, the second half of the season. So that's why I'm going to fold them here. I think the Rams will actually probably wind up winning this division, but that's not what we're doing here today. Let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that, honestly, I never give enough credit to for whatever reason. I don't know why. I never believe in the Steelers, and yet they find a way to still manage to be atop their division most of the time. So are you holding or folding them at 6-2?
Not to pile on you here, but when we did our preseason predictions, this is what I tried telling you when you were like under on the Steelers. I was like, dude, we do this every year. And I know the reason I say it is because I used to do it too. Like the 2 years before that, I was the same as you. I was like, under, they're done. Mike Tomlin's just a great football coach, man. Now, I do kind of push back and say, they do what they always do. They go above 500, make the playoffs, and get beat in the first round. It's probably what they'll do this year. I don't think they're going to win the division, even though I've been super impressed. To me, I feel like the Russell Wilson thing has to kind of come back down to the mean. He is playing well. He's pushing the ball downfield. with that defense, it's kind of like Seattle. Have a good defense, have Russ manage the game and throw a couple bombs to Pickens, because Justin Fields just wouldn't even throw Pickens any 50-50 balls. They're like, hey, he can go up and grab them. Just throw it up there. I think the Steelers very well could win this division, but on paper, the Ravens are a better football team. I do have some worries about the Ravens defense, so this might bite me, but I'm going to say fold them right now. I think the Ravens end up taking the division.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to fold them too. I think the Ravens win this division, and I think the Bengals may get on a late hot streak like they do every year and actually beat out the Steelers in some form or fashion. Could be wrong about that. I'm reaching. I know I'm reaching. It's the Bengals. They played a great game against the Raiders today, but still, they still played good football. Maybe this will give them enough confidence to win a few more games. Let's move on. The Detroit Lions, 7-1, man. Like, I'm going to ask you hold them or fold them, but pretty sure I guess your answer.
Another one that's easy. 6-game winning streak. They've already beat the Vikings. They've already beat the Packers. If you would have asked me a week or 2 weeks ago, I probably would have said fold them, and I would have stuck firm with my Packers prediction and said, no, the Packers are going. They're just not. And the Vikings are good, but even tonight, the Vikings kind of struggled against the Colts. I think we're starting to see the Vikings kind of, again, regress back to the mean. Still a good team, still a playoff team, but not how they looked early in the season. The Lions look head and shoulders above most teams in the NFC, in the NFL. There's very few teams you would put with the Lions and say, hey, they could beat them. There's very few. The Lions are winning this division. Hold them.
Yeah, I'm going to hold them too. The only loss they have is against Tampa Bay. It was 20-16 when Tampa Bay was the best team in the NFC South at the time when everybody was healthy. So, in my opinion, I think this Lions team has nobody in their way to victory in this division. Maybe in the NFC. Like, I think the Eagles, if they get on this streak like we were talking about, they may be the only one to kind of hold a flame or hold a torch to the Lions this year. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm going to hold them just as well as you. Next up, the Houston Texans at 6-3. Hold them or fold them?
Hold them, but not because I'm impressed with the Texans. It's just because the Colts lost tonight. The Titans lost. The Jaguars lost. I mean, the Texans are not great this year because the offensive line is bad. It's not all on them. CJ Stroud's not playing good, okay? He's not like awful, but he's not making the plays he was making last year. I think we're starting to get in a situation with CJ Stroud where he's bringing his eyes down and he's worried about the rush. I don't blame him because he's getting beat up out there. They've got injuries. Nico Collins has been hurt. He might be coming back. Stephon Diggs, he's out for the year. It just feels like it's kind of what we thought might happen. It's a little bit of that sophomore slump with the Texans. They're still 6-3. They're going to win the division just because the rest of the division is a disaster. But I don't think they're a real threat to any AFC team. Hold them, but by grace of their division.
Yeah, the next two teams down, the Colts and the Titans, have a combined win total of as much as the Texans right now. So I'm also going to hold the Texans just because everybody else is crappy on this division. So it's unfortunate for all these other teams, but fortunate for the Texans because you can still be a mediocre, middle-of-the-road team and win a division every now and then. Last team, let's round it out. The Falcons, Atlanta Falcons, 6-3 right now. Are you holding them or folding them?
You got to hold them mainly because of the injuries to the Bucs. Even without the injuries to the Bucs, Atlanta was able to beat them, that first time, and then the second time they beat them. Again, Atlanta is a good football team. How good are they? We won't know. It's funny. Atlanta's season is going to be determined by how they play the playoffs. They're going to probably win the division. They're going to make the playoffs. Can they win a playoff game? I think if they win one playoff game, the fans are going to be happy. I feel like the Kirk Cousins thing is going to be a success. Well, first, the Kirk Cousins thing is a success right now because he has them competitive. He has them winning football games. They're 6-3. They've won 2 straight. This is the best Falcons fans have felt in years. It might have got tight if, the Bucs hadn't had the wide receiver injuries. Mike Evans is probably coming back, but Godwin's out for the season. Just feels like they can't really catch a break. And with the Bucs defense having all the issues they do, the Falcons, while they have their issues, are the most complete team in the NFC South. Hold them, they win it.
I agree with you, man. And being Kirk Cousins, you got to be happy because you're out of the NFC North where the competition is much more stout than you're facing right now. The Bucs were giving you a run for your money. I agree with you. The injuries are going to play in their favor, the Falcons' favor. I think they'll win. And then also, if you ask Michael Thomas, I can tell you that the Saints aren't going to win this division. And he firmly believes that.
I agree. I agree with him.
I do too. I'm going to hold him on the Falcons. That is Hold 'em or Fold 'em, gentlemen and ladies. If you're watching, we love these little games that we put out here. So like these videos that we put out because it really matters. If you like these, comment down below. If you think that we're idiots, which most of you do, it's fine. Just let us know in the comment section. But that is the game for today. All right, guys, thank you for joining Sports Bluff. It has been a fun ride on Week 9, the train of Week 9. And, the Monday night game is still to come. The Chiefs still have to play the Bucs, and it could be a wild upset, man. I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of want to pick the Bucs. I'm not going to because, again, Patrick Mahomes is my daddy. I've already been adopted. I just don't see any of the income.
Yeah, agreed. If only you got a little piece of that paper, things would be up. We would upgrade our setup around here. Unfortunately, we'll have to keep rolling like we do, two idiots covering one sport and bluffing our way through the NFL season. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate all of you to watch and support. Tell your friends about it. Two idiots covering football, having fun while we're doing it. We'll see you guys next week. We'll have our picks out later this week. We promise we won't miss this week. For Ryan, I'm Tristan. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.